Would you like to look like a Hallmark Christmas movie lead character? Who wouldn't? They always look stunning. They usually are wearing a bright colored coat, a beautiful sweater, and sharp looking jeans and boots. They have that scarf on that goes perfectly with the sweater and the coat. They're just so pulled together and polished. Well, guess what? I have a surprise you're going to love. Hello ladies, my name is Kay and this is Dress for My Day. Welcome to today's special holiday edition video. Recently, I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with a costume designer for the Hallmark Christmas movies. What? Yes, I did. I got to interview Keith Nielsen, who is a New York City-based costume designer working in film, theater, and television. And for the last couple of years, he has been working with Hallmark Christmas movies. In fact, two of the movies that have already come out for this season, including Where Are You Christmas and Mystic Christmas, Keith was the costume designer in those. Maybe you've already seen them. And we have two to look forward to that Keith has also contributed to. This Saturday, November the 18th, A Merry Scottish Christmas will debut, and it stars Scott Wolf and Lacy Chabert. And Keith was the costume designer personally for the two of them. And then the Sunday after Thanksgiving, November 26th, you'll have the opportunity to see A Biltmore Christmas. And Keith was the costume designer on set for that movie as well. So I can't wait to see both of those. He says that both of them were, I'm tell you what, I'm not even gonna spoil anymore. I can't wait for you to hear this interview. Let's roll the interview.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I know that my viewers are so excited to hear from somebody who has designed costumes for Hallmark movies, specifically Hallmark Christmas movies. It's one of our favorite things to watch at this time of year. And we all kind of take a stab at dressing like Hallmark movie characters. But now I get the scoop. And so I'm really excited about that. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Well, first, just tell my viewers a little bit about you and how you came to be a costume designer.
So I'm the person that ended up doing everything I said I was never going to do. So never say never. I always thought I was more fashion focused than I was costume focused. But eventually in college, as an extracurricular, my friend and I would do student films. And then that led to an internship after graduation. And then I fell in love, or costumes fell in love with me. And I just worked my way up. I've done every position in the department. So I really understand it inside and out. And it's a torrid love affair, costumes and I, but I wouldn't change it for the world. And I started working with Hallmark about 2 years ago. And every year, I'm biased. I think I get the really cool ones, but I think we just get better and better. And I see posts all the time of people asking where the clothes are from. And that's really awesome because sometimes there's this old saying that good costume design is invisible, but it's nice when it is noticed. And I'm happy to share where things are from so people can, enjoy them in their real lives too.
Right. And we're going to get to that in a minute. But speaking of that, I think they're noticed on these movies because they're enviable. Like we want to be that woman, first of all. And then we want, I have told my viewers that I've been doing this now about 5 years, and my background is in journalism and public relations, and I kind of happened into this also. I'm not really a fashion person, not fashion trained. And one of the things I've learned, though, is that what we wear, how we dress, our looks, our personal style, I kind of think it tells our story, right? Like it tells people who we are. It communicates a lot to people, whether we want it to or not, or whether we mean for it to or not. And I think it tells a lot about my backstory, as well as, what I'm feeling like today and who I am today and how I'm going to communicate with you. But also it does tell a little bit about where I've been and where I've come from.
Of
So do
course.
you find that to be true? And how do you work that into your magic?
I do find that to be true. And there's two things. I always say I'm almost more interested in the story that happens before the script because I want to know how the person got there. And this year I have another period movie for them for Biltmore. and it's 1947 and 48, but we don't refresh our closets every year, like top to bottom. So I carry things from other eras. I mean, we all have coats and things that are 10 plus years old. I mean, I personally love the 80s. I love an 80s coat with a big shoulder. So, I mean, as long as it's in the future, but like that can, like you were saying, can tell you like where you've been and where you're from, but then you're bringing it into like the modern era. Costumes is visual storytelling. So, even if you just look at I mean, I always say it's like people think it's just like jeans and sweaters, but like nowadays the stories are so much more diverse and there's so many other like aspects to it, especially when you get into like period work. And then there's also period work, but for the modern eye, which is always interesting.
Now, last year I saw I think your movie that you did, the period piece was the one that was about like the Rockettes.
Yeah.
That was my favorite movie last year. I loved that one.
That one
And
was so cool to film. I mean, that's like a bucket list to film at Radio City. It's wild.
right now, remind me what was the name of that movie?
That's a holiday spectacular.
Right. So ladies, if you haven't seen that one, you need to, because it takes place what in like the 40s or so, I guess.
That's the 50s, which
50s.
is also super fun.
And then this year, your period piece, you said is the Biltmore Christmas, right? Is that what it's
Yep.
called?
That's all 1940s. So
I can't wait for that one. I love the Biltmore. I love the 1940s. That just looks so good to me.
it's stunning.
Well, do you prefer doing current movies that are like current days, or period pieces, or do you have a preference? Or
I like both. I think they're both an adventure. Contemporary is really interesting because you have to find meaning and nuance in like the small details. I mean, sometimes you're even looking at like the thickness of a knit. If is it heavier, is it lighter, and how does that convey things? Like you were talking before about how it communicates so much about like who you are, what you're going through. Like we make so many like style decisions that are like subconscious, especially when it comes to color, depending on your mood. And you
right,
don't even necessarily realize it until you're like, oh, I've been wearing, black, blue, and gray for a week. Or if you're wearing more bright colors because you're feeling great for the season. So it does. I mean, it is greatly visual communication, but I do love both of them. I think they're very fun. I think Biltmore's time travel, so we get a little bit of both. So we see some contemporary and we see a bunch of period. But yeah, I mean, I did two this year that were all contemporary, and that's super fun. And Hallmark and audiences love the color and the vibrancy of color. So that's also very fun to play with, especially when we're talking about color and how the cliche of just the red and green, like how can we communicate festive feeling and joy and warmth with other colors?
tell us a little bit about color. What do you think colors, what do colors communicate when we choose to wear them and all? What did they say about us?
I mean, I think the big thing is feeling, and I'm big on feeling because I always say like if you can make somebody feel a certain way, that's something they're not going to forget. And I love that, and especially with garments, I think that's why I love working in costumes is I can make someone feel like a character and feel something that evokes some kind of feeling or emotion. I think that's awesome.
Okay, so you mentioned a Biltmore Christmas, and you also worked on is it a Merry Scottish Christmas? Is that how you say
Yes.
it? Okay, which stars, is it Lacy? Is her name Chabert? Is that how we say Lacy?
I've always said Chabert. Yeah.
Okay, which she's of course one of everybody's favorites, I think. And so these are going to be great movies. Can you walk us through a little bit on just some of the costuming for either or both of those films, and maybe something about your favorite or just something you did there that we might want to take note of as we're watching them in the coming days?
Sure. So Scotland, just to share with everyone, I actually was brought on just to dress Lacy and Scott. So their characters are really interesting because they find out they have this Scottish heritage, and that's why they go to Scotland, but they are American. So their style, even though they're in the Scottish countryside, they are very American. But as they grow with the story, you notice a lot of like different choices I'm making. For example, Lacy wears two dresses by Alexander McQueen, who is known as English, but he's buried in Scotland because of his Scottish roots. And I use different brands like Burberry because like that's like a great like English brand and things like that. And that one was all contemporary too. So again, it was like talking about like the nuance and like the color choices. I had looked a lot about at Lacey's done like 38 Hallmark movies, not all Christmas, but I looked at like probably like all of them because you want to see, I don't know, I think especially even in like your personal style, like look at like what you've done before successfully, and then also like look at how to like maybe tweak it a little bit and make it a little bit different and make people be like, oh, wasn't expecting that. I like to add like a little bit of unexpected. Like I like the expected because we're comfortable with it, but take a risk. And then yeah, I mean, I did like a lot of just like classic good color combinations. I love a jewel tone. I think jewel tones can look good on like pretty much anybody. And they're also so great to like feel like the warmth of the holiday without being a cliche red or green. Like a deep blue, like with like the right accessories, or like I love a plum, or I personally love burgundy, like oxblood is my favorite. Like I'm constantly being told to pull back the oxblood. Because I can go overboard with it. I just think it's like a more elegant holiday color. I mean, Biltmore is just like next level, but that one I'm really, really proud of my movies because I don't, like I mentioned before, I don't do the cliche necessarily everything's red or green. And there's like a really pretty red 40s coat, which is just like the perfect Christmas coat. And in both of those movies, color was like a big factor in like choosing things because you're looking at the space you're in, which is like big when you're dressing, you know, for an event. You want to like kind of understand like what the space you're going to be in, and
Yes.
dressing for that. And that's a big source of inspiration for me is spaces. What space are we populating?
So let me ask you something about that because I wrote a blog post a few years ago about what to wear when you're hosting a holiday thing in your home. And
Mhm.
my thinking kind of was go neutral or like go soft gold, like gold, monochromatic gold or monochromatic ivory, like because your house is probably all decorated in color. Well, mine is like I like color in my house, and I generally wear neutrals on my body. But like, so give us a little thought on that. If you're hosting something in your home, what are some of the things that you need to think about as far as like how you're dressing? You're having people coming in, you want it to be a celebrative type thing, but your house is also decorated and everything.
I think that's a really good point. You want to dress for like what you want to speak. So if you want the space and like the warmth of that to speak, you don't want to pull away from it. You want to enhance it. Sometimes personally, what I love to do, and I do in a lot of these movies, is if you have like a primary color you're using, for example, say like your tree's rose gold, I'd say go for a rose gold dress or something. Like I love when it's very much almost like a monochromatic painting, because you kind of, not in a bad way, but you kind of like blend with the space and you become one of it. But I also always point out to people, whether you're going to an event, hosting an event, I also think comfort is very important. I hate when I see people like putting themselves in things that are like wildly uncomfortable and like a million layers of shapewear, like you're not having a good time. So
Right.
comfort and looking good go hand in hand.
Well, unfortunately, right now there's a lot of things that are comfortable, like velour and velvet, and
Oh, I
just
love, especially on screen and in photos, I love a velvet dress. They just, I
right.
think you'll never like be mad. I think if you get like holiday family photos done, if you do a velvet, I think it always just photographs so
Oh
well.
yeah, that's so good. Thank you for that. That was really helpful. So, how would you describe the Hallmark look? Uh, and maybe you're thinking it's evolving, and it is. It definitely
It
has
is.
evolved to us. But I think there's still just that iconic holiday Hallmark movie look. And how would you describe that? And like maybe give us like if we want to look like a Hallmark movie character, because I think a lot of women do. What are some of the cues there?
So when I started with them, all I had on was the Hallmark Channel. Like that's all I watched and just absorbed all of it. I boiled a lot of it down. It's the way it's shot. They have a style in the way that they shoot things. And then I boiled it for me, and especially that now I've done this year, it'll be 7 for Hallmark. That it's all about color equations. So I mentioned before, like the brightness and saturation of color. Like you really want to do, if you're going to do pink, you want it to be like a really punchy, saturated pink. Or I did a movie with Jessie Schramm, Mystic Christmas, and like we loved her in royal blue, but it was like really, really like bright, not like summer bright, but
Mhm.
like I talked about those jewel tones, but they're
Yes.
really saturated. And something I like to do is if I have like a blue coat, I mix it with like a blue pattern scarf. So it's a pattern, but it's still in that monochromatic world. And then also my signature is I'll do a blue glove too. So it's all very like a very much like almost like Picasso's blue period kind of thing. And then the other big part with that, coats we know are a big thing. We
Yes.
love coats and colorful coats. Jeans are really, really important. And I always say, like, once you kind of find the jean that works for you, for me, I get it in like every wash that I like, because you just
Right.
never know when they're gonna stop making it.
Right.
When I started, I used to love a J. Crew skinny jean. Now, personally, I'm loving like a slim, straight Levi's jean.
Huh?
Um, and I love the ones that are like a darker wash is definitely big because darker wash reads more winter. And then you need the perfect boot.
Yes.
You can do a flat boot. You can do I like a little block heeled boot. But yeah, the classic Hallmark look really is a great jean, a good boot, and a great sweater.
Right.
Um, but yeah, and then I mean, and stores like I go to everywhere and anywhere in between, and I think that's a big thing about style too, is there's no one-stop shop. I'm all about mixing and matching, and I'm very much age is just a number. My mother just turned 60, and I'm like, she is cool as hell. So I'm like, it doesn't matter necessarily even where it comes from. It's like how you put it together.
Right.
Um, and I mean, a lot of these, I mean, I love a Levi's jean. I love Ann Taylor and Ann Taylor Loft had some really, really awesome knits that are very bright and colorful, but still have that coziness. And speaking of comfort, I mentioned before, like I love like an acrylic knit. Like I don't love anything too heavy. I like things that breathe. Even in the winter, I just like run very hot, and I think like they do like really great stuff like that. And the classic, I mean, I always think a good go-to for like a chino or a jean is like a great Banana Republic or a J. Crew.
Yes. Yes. I love all of those. I know my ladies shop a lot of those that you just mentioned, as well as Talbots.
Love
Also,
Talbots.
yeah, because they just have this, and they have Talbots has great color too. They have really
Mhm.
saturated colors. So tell me a little bit about too. I'm glad to hear that your mom just turned 60. I'll be turning 60 in just a couple of months. And like I mentioned to you before we get started, most of my viewers are 50 and above. And so while we love the heroine in all of these Hallmark movies, for the most part, we would identify more with the mother to the star, right? So tell us a little bit. I mean, do you also costume the mother character in the movies, and how do you do that any differently, or do you do anything differently for the older women?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with the script and the story, and like, and then the other thing too is casting really impacts it. Who are you casting? And also I learned very early on dress for the face, dress for the shape of the face. Um, like, and you want to like, I don't know, it's like I dressed an actress recently that she had really great like cheekbones and like a great strong jawline and like a really funky haircut. So we dressed her a little bit more edgy. But so it just depends on like where you like lie with casting. But I think there's always a way to dress and wear what you want without look like you're like trying to be like younger, for
Yeah,
sure.
right.
So my mother was cleaning out a closet yesterday, and she had this coat from the 80s, and I mentioned I love 80s coats, so I kept it for like my collection and storage. But I was like, you can't wear that. Like it's gonna age you. I'm like, I love it, but like I'm gonna put it on like a character that's like 25. But if you wear it, it's gonna severely age you.
That's interesting. I think that is definitely something I hadn't thought of, but I think you're right. So you mentioned earlier that the costuming changes a little bit. I think is specifically when you were talking about the Scottish Christmas movie,
Mhm.
and how the costuming changed as the movie progressed. So obviously you're kind of telling a story there of things are progressing. What can you tell us a little bit about that? Like what kinds of changes do you make? And then maybe if you can, like if we want to change the story that we're telling, or how do we go about doing that? What kinds of little tweaks are you making there?
So in Scotland, you'll notice she has like a pretty clear color story, as well as incorporating those brands I mentioned that are like more tied to like the location we're at. Um, she's very like in her character's very disinterested in like being there. She's a doctor, I love that. We're always like a doctor, a lawyer, a
Yeah,
writer.
very
Um,
successful.
I love the fantasy of it. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, yes.
And so she's in like blacks, grays, my favorite, like burgundy, oxblood. And then as she gets more comfortable in this new environment, like we start adding more punches of color and more festive things. Um, And yeah, I mean, I always think about, it's funny because like what's the story you're trying to tell of your life? Or like if you write your like memoir, like what do you want your story to be? And I
That's
always say it's color, pattern, and texture.
color, right? Color, pattern, and texture. Absolutely. I like that. One thing I've seen evolving in Hallmark movies lately is that they're not always choosing the skinny little thing
Mhm.
to play the main role. We've seen some more mid-size and plus size women play the lead role in some Hallmark movies recently, which I love that. And so what are some things that you do to dress those silhouettes and still look really feminine and still look pulled together instead of just like a balloon, um, because especially if the camera's going to add pounds anyhow, you want to look pulled together and show off your figure, but you don't have that little tiny starlet figure. So what are some of the things that you do there?
It's two things for me. It's proportion and understanding your proportions. Are you like a regular size or are you a petite? And like where do things hit on you? And also understanding proportion is I'm a huge fan of tailoring, especially like I'm not saying, and it's weird. Fashion right now, like I mean, the world's very much about like quantity over quality. I'm all about like get like great staples and have them tailored to you. Even like great jeans that like they're gonna like if you invest in a good pair of jeans, a good pair of slacks, get them tailored, make sure the rise hits you. Are you short-waisted? Are you long-waisted? Those are like little things that make a massive difference. Is the shoulder seam sitting on your actual shoulder? Um, it's all these things that like I think just the way that fashion's evolved, like we've really like lost sight of that. But I mean, those things make such a difference. Even if like it's all from the Gap, like if it's tailored correctly, you could look like $1 million.
That is a really interesting point that I had not thought of, because I know a lot of times people won't they'll complain because they'll say the quality is just not what it used to. And sometimes they have legitimate arguments, but a lot of times what they're really saying is it doesn't fit me like it used to.
Mhm.
These things, like I'm going to the same store and they're not fitting me the way they used to. But if you get it tailored, then that makes up for a multitude of sins
It
as far as
does.
inequality. And then quality wise, it looks like good quality on you because, like you say, it's tailored to your body. So that's a
Yeah, and
really
that's the other thing with Hallmark movies is like they're a little bit fake because like I do have a tailor on staff
right.
and everything is tailored to them. And I love, like I mentioned, I love tailoring, so I will take in a t-shirt if I need to. Um, and yeah, I do. I personally like I love jackets, so I have all my suits and all of like my outerwear are just like tailored to like perfection.
Right.
Because I love a great overcoat that sits on the shoulder and the sleeve, and I like a little bit of like what's underneath to peek out. And that's also like a big sign of like quality, even if like the garments may be more affordable. Just the
Yeah.
way that it fits you is like a great sign of quality.
So what would you say
Definitely.
are the key things that you need to have tailored to your body to really look good?
I always say you need, I mean, even if you don't get it hemmed, you need a jean that has like the proper inseam on you. And the same thing with slacks. I mentioned like the short-waisted thing that sits on your waist, like where you want it to sit, but I also like the top of it hits like the smallest part of your waist. I love a high-waisted jean or like a high-waisted pant. I think they look great on like a multitude of people.
Yes.
Um, I think everybody needs some kind of great suit type of jacket or blazer, which I'm also crazy about on women with tailoring. It's just because it needs to be tailored correctly around your silhouette. I mentioned like a great overcoat because like you have different events you're going to.
So tell me, what has been the biggest challenge of working on Hallmark movies in your career? What would you say has been the biggest challenge with those?
Time, because I don't know if you know this, we shoot them very, very quickly. So I typically have
Oh,
2.5 weeks to prep them and 3 weeks to shoot them. And to
wow.
give you some context, I mean, on Holiday Spectacular, which we mentioned earlier, had think it was like 230 something principal costumes head to toe. And way over 1,000, maybe 2,000 background costumes. So it's a lot of quantity mixed with like the quality and things that we were speaking about. And I love tailoring, and that's a lot of things to tailor. But
Right.
like older clothes, the beauty of working in period is those clothes were meant in a way, I mean, if there were custom pieces, they were not meant to be altered, and there's like no allowances anywhere. But a lot of things were, worn for extended periods of time because they spent decent money on things and they wanted to like wear them to the most of their ability. So they would be altered over the years as bodies would change, or you'd give it to your sister or something like that. And that's the other thing I love about period is like there's so much history in clothes. And there's certain things that are like timeless, like the eternal little black dress that you can carry from like almost generation to generation, and it can be a great quality piece to have.
So when they did the Biltmore, was that film partly on location at the Biltmore, or was it all on a set somewhere?
All on location. And so I've
Oh,
been saying like you literally can't buy that quality. I mean, I have no idea what that home is worth, but I can only imagine. Um, and that was like I was talking about spaces before and dressing for spaces, or like the event space you might know what you're going to be in. And that was a big source of inspiration of knowing that the story was written for that house and then spending time in that space to be able to populate it with people. Just as far as like tones and colors and we keep talking about space, so I just keep thinking I have a wedding to go to tomorrow, so I keep being like a wedding and like thinking about like the space and like the tones of the space and what like the bridal party's wearing. I mean, I think it's all like layers you build on.
two things we all really can do in everyday life, huh? Is we can think about, tailoring. Obviously, we can think about how color tells a story. We can think about how, like you said, the space that you're going to be in, especially if, like you said, you are going to an event or you're hosting an event, you're speaking at something, you got to
Mhm.
make a presentation at something. That, yeah, so
That's like
those are
literally like my thought process in these like all the time is like, what's our location? Like, what couch are they sitting on? Like, yeah, if you're doing a sit down interview, like the chair and the color of it, I think is very important.
right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Keith, it's been a joy talking to you. And let's tell the ladies again what movies you have coming up that they'll be able to see your work in.
Well, there's two that have already been released. They were October movies. That was Where Are You Christmas and Mystic Christmas.
Yes, those are
And
good.
then the 18th, we have A Merry Scottish Christmas.
Okay.
And the 26th is A Biltmore Christmas, which I know everyone is anxiously awaiting. And both were on location too. So there's really great scenery
Wow.
and yeah.
Okay, so ladies, when we're watching this, we know the guy who did the costuming for Lacy and for the male character there, and then also for Biltmore Christmas. So that is really exciting. Well, Keith, thank you so much for speaking with my ladies today. I know they've enjoyed it, and I certainly have enjoyed getting to hear from you too.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Well, what did you think, ladies? I hope you got some great takeaway from that. I really did. I learned a lot from Keith. It was a delightful conversation. I really enjoyed talking to him. And whether you watch Hallmark Christmas movies or not, I think maybe you were able to pick up a few tips from him. So let me know in the comments below what your takeaway was from today's interview. I'd love to hear what you thought. And don't forget to check out Keith's movies that are coming up this Saturday and then the Sunday after Thanksgiving. So if you enjoyed today's video, I hope you'll give me a thumbs up on your way out. It was a joy to be able to provide this special treat for you today. And if you've not already done so, please subscribe to my channel. That would really be a delight to me. All right, ladies, I will actually see you again Saturday for a special edition video. And so I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you then. Bye now.